Hey everybody, it's Jane Johnston with the Briar Hill Group at Remax Camosun, host of Vancouver Island Time and Community Talks Daily at 4:30. Today we have Colleen Adrian. Colleen Adrian runs her own practice where she helps parents who are parenting sensitive kids and who have unique challenges under normal circumstances. However, we're finding right now during this difficult time of COVID-19, when everyone's feeling isolated, that maybe parents need a little bit of help in working out what is going to be their new routine and new activities while we are without our normal structure. So today, Colleen's agreed to come on and talk to me about how she can help you in figuring out how to cope with your child who may be sensitive. Welcome, Colleen.
Thanks. Thanks for inviting me, Jane.
No problem. Not the best introduction, sorry.
It's okay. It's all good.
How are you doing?
I'm pretty good today. Thanks. How about yourself?
I'm good. Lisa from Salt Spring Island is watching today, so that's nice.
Nice. Hello, Lisa.
So tell me about who's your ideal client? Who are the types of families or parents that you work with?
Well, as you've already mentioned, I work with parents of sensitive kids. And so what that looks like in terms of the kids is the kids are often have intense emotions. So they might, sometimes even the younger ones, parents will say they go from 0 to 100 in like a few seconds. The emotions escalate quickly. They might be the type of kids who are sensitive to their clothing tags, can't stand to be at birthday parties for too long or the swimming pool because it's too noisy, so they're sensitive to sound. Often these kinds of kids have really sensitive parents as well. So they have a parent that also really can understand them. And also because of the parent sensitivity, especially if the kids have struggle with their emotions or struggle with managing their emotions, often the parents have a bit of difficulty with that as well because the parents are sensitive themselves. So you can imagine that for somebody who's really sensitive, to have a child that's out of control feels, more overwhelming than it might for your average parent.
Do you mean sensitive in terms of noise or tactile or food
Yes.
or all of the above?
Yes. Thanks for asking that. It could be any or all of the above. Food sensitivities, sensitive to food additives, and the types of impact that it has on the kids is usually at a really basic nervous system level. So you might see trouble sleeping, trouble focusing in class, trouble listening or hearing you when you're asking them to do something, those kinds of things. And then if they're not managing, what happens is the emotions escalate.
In both the parents and the kids.
In both the parents and the kids, yes.
So in that case, are you giving them strategies for coping or like teaching them new habits or new responses to what's going on? So like if, somebody starts, if you see the child start to vibrate and,
Mhm.
you know that he or she is about to go off the deep end. So you teach them methods to bring them back down, or
Yes.
how do you do it?
Yes. So I teach the parents strategies for what they can do with the child and or teenager, and that includes strategies that they can use just in terms of the environment. That includes specific strategies sometimes that include activities. Often it includes what they say to the child. Um, and that's especially important for teenagers, but really it's important for all children. Lots of us were raised in a way that we weren't really seen or heard very deeply, and or we weren't necessarily, what we call in attachment parenting, attuned to very well. So we didn't have our emotional needs or our emotions recognized and acknowledged and our emotional needs met. And so often it has to do with what parents are saying to their children.
Mm-hmm. I'm just thinking of my childhood. I mean, my parents were so overwhelmed. They have 5
Yeah.
kids, and we. I know we were a handful,
Yeah.
and I tried to be the good kid, but it doesn't always work.
Yeah. It's hard, and you raise a really important point. As I was thinking about and preparing to speak with you today, I was thinking about how attunement, the ability to attune to our children really depends on what our experience was of being attuned to when we were kids, right? Because that's where we learn from parents. And many of us, I'm in my 50s, so many of us had parents who didn't attune to us very accurately or very well for really good reasons. Sometimes it was because um, they didn't feel very, I'm going to use the word safe, the nervous system language. They didn't feel very safe themselves. They were overwhelmed by trying to provide enough. Many of us had parents who were born before the Depression and lived through the Depression. So they really were, if you think in terms of the nervous system and the reptilian brain, they really were struggling to survive. And if you think about what that means in terms of the reptilian brain, that means that there's at least some partial activation of that fight flight portion of the brain instead of the completely safe, we know we're going to be okay, right?
Hmm.
And that's where you need to be in order to really fully attune to your child. You need to be in that more what's called a ventral vagal state and feel safe. So lots of our parents didn't do that just because they didn't have the circumstances. They couldn't.
We should mention too that Colleen has a master's in nursing. So I was going to say nurturing, that too.
They go together.
So she knows what she's talking about. This is not coming out of left field. So, so do you find like right now? I was thinking that with COVID-19 and the fact that there's been such a drastic change over the past 2.5 months with what we're doing every day, that this is going to have long-term effects on our kids and and us as parents too. Like, I mean, we have literally had a shock to our system, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I think there's some potential. I think for sure there's potential, and I think it can go in a lot of different directions, to be really honest. I've had a lot of parents say to me, and I've had some experiences with this myself, is that there's an opportunity to connect like you haven't had before because we're all home, right?
Right.
And so, there's a potential for a positive lasting effect. And I also want to add, I don't want to minimize like how difficult it is for people. Like some people are more worried than others about their jobs and about the future of their income. Some people are trying to work from home with little kids. Like there's all sorts of stressors. And I'm glad that you raised that because the parenting support that I provide really looks at almost everything to at least some extent through the lens of nervous system regulation. And so that need for safety and attunement is really our basic need, like that need to be really seen and to feel safe. And just the fact, without even all those other stressors that I just mentioned, just the fact that there's kind of an invisible threat floating around out there that we don't know if we could be
Yeah.
in contact with, or if it's going to affect, grandma or, anybody who we know, is it plays on our nervous system, right?
Right. And so for us, what we've been trying to do is provide a little structure for our kids so they have a daily chore that they have to do. So they know they're going to get a job assigned to them, which,
Mhm.
surprised me when after 2 weeks they're like, really? I'm like, yeah, life is pretty boring. You do have to empty the dishwasher and take the garbage and do the sort of regular and make dinner and I found for me I started this program and other stuff just to give myself some structure to the day and
Mhm.
started listening to people. But um I find for them they kind of feel like they're a little bit lost. I know
Mhm.
they're probably sleeping a lot more, which is maybe not a bad thing
Mhm.
than normal. But I was saying to them, sometimes I think that the lack of activity right now is going to make you depressed or
Mm.
uh, not happy. Because you're
Mhm.
not going to be out and about doing normal activity. I notice physically, we're all getting in worse shape. So
Mhm.
that to me, anyways, a side effect in my own house. Are you finding though it's helping? Do you think it'll help kids prioritize what's important to them? I know for parents, it's doing that. It's doing that for me of who I want to hang out with and what I'm going to be paying attention to
Yeah.
now on.
I think so. Again, I think it has a lot to do with the conversations that you're having with your kids and that they're hearing you have maybe with your partner or with other people on the phone or whoever you're connecting with. The conversations they hear you have about priorities and how to decide what you're doing with your life, for sure have an impact. And I do think, it's one of those once in a lifetime
Reset.
kinds of things, like we don't know what it's like to live through a war, for instance, but that had for sure a lasting impact on everybody who lived through it.
Do you find, so let's say somebody's losing their cool with their kid right now,
Yeah.
because how many weeks are we in? 9, 8? What strategy would you give them to reset themselves for a parent?
So again, looking at it through the lens of nervous system regulation, one of the most common things that I remind people to do and that I teach people about is just about bringing yourself back to the present moment. So usually if we're feeling anxious or afraid or frustrated, usually something that we're worried about or that we are afraid of has to do with something potentially that could happen off in the future, right? It's not usually related to the present moment because we're safe right here. The other piece that's important to mention and to understand is that um, when we start to lose it, usually something from the past is being triggered. And usually, and not usually, all the time, what's happening in our nervous system is we're going into more of a state of fight or flight, or even a state of freeze, which is more of a dissociative, spacey kind of a place to be, where you're less even aware of what you're saying. So we've all had the experience where we kind of get mad or we lose it, and afterwards you can hardly remember what you said, right?
Yeah.
So that's an indication of how much of the cognitive part of your brain is functioning, right? Dan Siegel calls it the downstairs brain, right? The downstairs brain is all lit up and the upstairs brain isn't really working very well. So the orienting process that I talk with parents about is really about bringing yourself back into the present moment. And it can involve, you can do it for, a few seconds or for a minute or two, or even for 10 minutes. So it involves elements such as, and I'm doing it here as I'm talking about it, it involves maybe looking around the room, or if you're outside in your yard, looking around and noticing items. Like I'm looking at a book right now and maybe naming it out loud, and I'm looking at that picture over on the wall right now. And as soon as you do that, you come from that disconnected place where you were in your head back into the present moment more.
Hmm.
You can add elements of noticing the sensation of your bottom on the chair that you're sitting on, noticing the
It's very uncomfortable, by the way.
yeah.
That's
Noticing the sensation of the floor underneath your feet and just really feeling the support of the environment around you and reminding yourself that you're safe. And if you do that, you'll not only come more back into the present moment, but coming back into the present moment actually helps calm your nervous system, and it's a place from which it's going to be easier for you to come up with some calm, rational words to
yeah,
speak to your child.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of like you're coming down literally from the high of being upset, right?
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
I think some people get addicted to being upset and they ramp themselves up, and sometimes you just need to calm down. What I find, so it's interesting being a parent, especially with a young daughter,
Mm.
I when I see her communicating or the issues that she's having. It reminds me of stuff that I went through when I was a teenager, and I
Mhm.
try and relate to it when I'm talking with them. And I'm sure for them, they are like, "Oh, mom," but anyway, it's eye opening to relive your adolescence as your adolescents go through it, and
Yeah.
I think maybe I think maybe people in menopause shouldn't have teenagers. So
It's really challenging.
it is. So how has COVID-19 affected you in your relationship with your clients? Are you still able to mentor them and coach them?
I'm definitely able to still mentor them and coach them. I do all of my one-on-one mentoring either on the phone or through Zoom. So that hasn't been affected at all. I offered a course here locally on Salt Spring Island a couple of months ago on how to teach your child to calm and self-regulate for parents of 2 to 8 year olds, helping them with just the things we've been talking about. And I was planning to offer that online anyways, but I'm offering it now in June. Essentially, the COVID isolation has speeded everything up. I really realized that when I was reading online, I was reading on Facebook and other social media about the struggles parents were having. I was like, whoa, I really need to get this moving, because it's exactly what can support parents
I agree.
to stay connected with their kids and to really teach them foundational skills that are going to support them to have some emotional intelligence and emotional management for their life.
Do you find it helps them with their relationships with their spouse too?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's helped me. Yeah, for sure.
So, do you
Yeah,
find
the
are you getting different inquiries from your clients now? Uh-oh.
um I seem to be getting we
Your
lose each other?
visual is frozen, but that's okay. I can hear you. Keep going.
Okay. I find that I'm getting an increased number of inquiries and a broader spectrum of inquiries for sure related to helping kids, and teens are another. Probably the most common inquiries that I'm getting are people with fairly small children that are preschool age and also teenagers. And I think those are probably the age groups where parents are struggling the most.
Yeah, I told my kids, I said, this is a really hard time to parent because we have to choose between your instantaneous happiness of seeing your friend and, uh, you know, exposing you to something that potentially could kill you.
Mm,
It's like, your joy, which you are tuned into as a teenager, and our, long-term look at your life and
yeah,
very.
yeah. It's so hard, and it's partly their joy, as you point out, and as you, I'm sure, already know, it's also partly developmentally that real deep desire and need that they have to separate from family and to start trying on having their peer group as their tribe that they feel like they belong to, as opposed to the family being the primary. Developmentally, I think that's a really strong drive.
Yeah.
So it's hard to fight that. It's like trying to slow down a train.
So, I'm just wondering if you have a tip right now that you can share with parents that they could start using practically. So you talked about the looking around the room and getting into their body. Do you have another tip you could share?
Um, yeah, let me just think for a moment.
Do you
Um,
do you use safety words or anything like that?
Safety words? Do you mean with my kids?
Yeah, like do you say, okay, when I say banana, that means like stop. Where you've overstepped the boundary. Do you use stuff like that?
No, I'm more likely to say how I feel, or if I feel like I need time out. Um, then I just say those words. If my son, if I feel like he's overstepped a boundary, I will say I can't think of something. If I feel like he's overstepped a boundary, I'm more likely to say how I feel, and yeah. Does
Is
that
he
answer your question?
all of that?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so that's training the child and the parent.
Absolutely, through role modeling. And, I notice that when he needs to step away, he'll say, I just need to go. I just need to walk. Right. So he'll step away until he's cooled off, and then we can resume the conversation.
Yeah, I did that when my kids were little. I'd like feel angry in the moment, and then I would go back to it when I was less angry. It's
Hmm. Yeah.
hard though.
Yeah. And when you were asking for another tip, the first thing that came to my mind, which is just a one word tip, is to pause and take a breath. You know, it sounds simple, but it's not always easy.
Right. Do you find that right now that parenting issues are affecting marriage issues? Is there uh, conflict within the family all around now with your clients?
I think so. From what I'm hearing, and it's hard to say, it's like which came first, the chicken or the egg. It's hard to say, they all feed into each other. And I think for me, it feels like what's happening is, we struggle with these things. It's not easy for the reasons I talked about earlier. Lots of us haven't had a lot of experience or haven't had role modeling of good attunement. And so we've learned all of these habits of blaming and shaming to kind of try to get our needs met, but they're not very healthy and they don't make other people feel very good. And it feels like we can cope when we get a break from those other people, right? Like, this person's going off to work and this person's going to school, and we can manage if we're only together for a few days. And it's like they all come bubbling to the surface because they get magnified when we're all home together. So if we don't have any foundational skills for recognizing what's going on, and the reason that I love the nervous system regulation piece so much is, without a doubt, it has been the single most important and informative thing in my life that's helped me recognize where I am, um, in terms of fight, flight, or what's going on, and helped me to get myself back, or helped me to point out what I thought somebody else was struggling with in a really non-judgmental and compassionate way, and support us to get back on track. Because the thing about the nervous system is that it's automatic, right?
Hmm.
So we don't have conscious control over it until we get some enlightenment about it. And once we get enlightenment about it, it is kind of like a map. It's like being able to see where you are on the map. And then once you recognize where you are, whoa, I'm in fight flight. It's like, okay, I've been here before. I know how to get back. These are my resources, right? And that's what I help parents with: tools, resources, recognizing what those behaviors look like for both parents and kids. And then recognizing some of the things, not only behaviorally, that help people get back, but also that actually soothe the nervous system.
To make you feel better.
They make you feel better.
That's
Yeah.
always a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. So, how do people get in touch with you?
So people can, my website is colleenadrian.com.
Mm-hmm.
People can email me at colleen@colleenadrian.com. Um,
And you have
and
a book out there.
I have a book out there called Freeing Your Child from Self-Criticism and Perfectionism. And for people who would like to just kind of dip in and hear a little bit of my, a little bit more about what I have to say, and try to figure out whether or not I might be a good fit to work with them at some point. I write every week and I publish at least once a week on social media. It's just free content, insights, and parenting tips that are out there. And I send out a newsletter once a month with a blog post.
Well, I think it's totally, well, it's necessary and at any time, especially necessary right now. And actually, it ties in right with what we're doing every Tuesday here on this show when we're talking about co-parenting, separation,
Mhm.
and divorce. And really, parents should be getting on the same page, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that their kids end up, when they go into an environment, they know what kind of parent they're going to be
Hmm.
dealing with. One thing I like about living with my husband is we have the same values, and
Nice.
it's interesting when there's an issue, we both say the exact same thing comes out of our mouth. So it's a lot easier, I think, than to live with somebody who has completely different values.
Yes, that's much easier.
So if you want to get in touch with Colleen, please visit her at ColleenAdrian.com. If you want information on what's happening in real estate, you can contact me. I'm Jane Johnston with the Bar Hill Group at Remax Close, and we'll see you tomorrow, where we'll have Laurel Dietz, Bettina Plendel, and Lori Frank talking to us about co-parenting, separation, and divorce. Thank you so much for coming today. I appreciate it. It's such a good thing to see your face again.
Yeah, nice talking with you, Jane. Thanks for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
No problem. We'll chat with you soon. Bye-bye.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.